Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, here in beautiful, snowy Montreal. Today we're heading out west to Calgary to speak with a guest who challenges the very labels we use in this industry. She explicitly told me she does not identify as a fractional CMO, but rather as an authentic marketing advisor. She's the founder of TLB Coaching at Events, the host of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, and a leader in the Collaborative Entrepreneurship Incubator. She's on a mission to help business leaders stop copying the Rockefeller habits of trillion-dollar companies and start building a marketing machine that actually fits their unique DNA. Today's Fractional Pros Canada podcast, powered by Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional executive community with over 1,000 members across Canada. Join us on our Facebook group. Just search for Fractional Pros Canada on Facebook. You can also find Fractional Pros Canada on LinkedIn. Tracy Borreson, welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
Thank you, Robert. I'm excited to be here.
All right, so it's great to. I feel like I found a good connection in Calgary. You're pretty well known in your community over there, so hopefully our communities will get to know each other a little bit better. Let's start off with your origin story, but not the business one. So on your LinkedIn, you write about growing up as a jack of all trades, and would that be a Janet of all trades in the case? I don't know how that works. Anyways,
I just say Jack.
All right. So you were on sports teams. You did watercolor painting. You were in academic challenges. But you said you felt like a master of disguise who had to hide pieces of yourself to fit into all those different groups. So I'm really curious if you could maybe share with us, how does that experience of trying to fit in everywhere back in the day influence what you're doing today in your philosophy of authentic marketing?
Yeah, well, it's actually really interesting because the more I explore this backstory, this origin story, what I actually feel like maybe I was tapped into, but maybe not everyone was tapped into, was that I want to do all of these things. I have a desire to have good grades. I want to play basketball. I also feel artistic, right? Like I was on student council. I made the yearbook in high school. Right? Like I did all the things. I graduated with like way too many credits. I just did all the things that I wanted to do. And the thing that made me feel the most unusual was that I didn't see anyone else doing that. And so I was like, I'm kind of a weirdo in this arena, but I feel good about my weirdo-ness. So there was always this level of, well, I didn't fit a mold, and I did have to, I don't even know if it was so much hide as just not openly share, right? So like, I didn't openly share what I did at art class with the basketball team, and I didn't openly share the basketball scores with the people in the academic challenge, right? Like, there wasn't like a free flow of information between all of the pieces, but there was still that like, this is more so me protecting you from not being able to handle it because I can handle it, which now as I grow in my personal and professional development journey, I'm like, maybe that was unhelpful, but now I feel like I just opened a whole can of worms there and you can take it whatever direction you want.
Well, I've made my takeaway from that is embrace the weirdness. So I like that because I think weirdness is good. Some people say I'm weird too, and I never take that as an insult. But also it's an interesting point you bring up because it's happened to me in situations where I've been accused of filtering on behalf of the other person, which sounds a little bit like kind of what you're alluding to what you did. And yeah, I kind of learned that lesson too. Like, don't filter on, don't worry about the other person. They're an adult in the room. They can handle themselves. They can say yes or no or whatever the case may be, and don't try to preempt that. So I kind
Well,
of
and just to like add on to that, like my jam is authenticity, right? Authentic marketing advisor. Authenticity is very commonly misconstrued as someone else's interpretation of you. And the way that I like to look at it is, are you doing what you would do? So if you're out in the world networking, doing business, choosing classes, or whatever stage of your journey you're at, and you are doing what you think someone else is expecting you to do, or you're doing what someone else is doing because that seems like a good idea, that is less authentic. And a lot of times we can only be as authentic as we are self-aware, right? So if we don't know what we want, then we can't necessarily choose what we want. But as we go through this exercise and extrapolate that into a lot of people running their own businesses now who have spent most of their career gaining expertise and not running their own businesses, it's very easy to see what other people are doing, but it's less easy to know what we would do. And so tapping back into that, like, oh, is that my weirdness? Would I choose that? Am I doing that because am I calling myself a fractional CMO because everyone else is calling themselves a fractional CMO and I want to make it easier on the people receiving that information? Is that really who I am? Now I'm doing the same thing, right? I'm changing me to like help, quote unquote, help other people. And there's just like layers of depth there, right? Like it's not any of these behaviors are bad or wrong. It's just that like, how clear are we that that's what we would do? And if we're not constantly asking ourselves, what would we do? Then we don't ever get good at answering that question.
Now, that being said, would you still agree that there is a time and a place for, especially in business, to ask, oneself the question, what would Elon Musk do in this situation? What would Warren Buffett do? Or what would Bill Gates do? Is that still something that there is a right time and place for, or is that completely inauthentic and no longer something anyone should be doing?
I think it depends on how closely aligned you feel to that person. Right? So it would be much more authentic for me to ask myself, what would Brené Brown do? Or like, I have a really great friend, Paul Howery, who's a belonging expert, right? And he hasn't published a bunch of books and there's not a whole bunch of people who know who he is, but he is all about how do we show how we feel, own, and care for people and their successes, dreams, and failures. That is a narrative that is very aligned with me. And so, sure, I think it can, especially when we don't know what we would do, looking at what someone else would do who is very aligned to us is helpful. Me asking myself, what would Elon Musk do? Probably not overly helpful because when I look at his decisions, I don't know that there's a lot of those decisions I would make.
Fair enough. So we'll just realign that to your own, let's say, personal hero or somebody that is aligned with your values and you respect and is kind of like a beacon of experience to look to in times of need, for lack of more in-depth terms. Okay. All right.
And I would also say, I would say even better than that, find some people who are values aligned with you that you can get into conversation about a topic with, right? So like, oh, I don't really know how I feel about this. Exploring through conversation is very powerful, especially when you're in a safe space. And so it's one of the things I love about community, like the Fractional Pros community, right? There's a whole bunch of people who are here who believe fundamentally the same things. Get into conversation, explore it for yourself. Don't just end with the destination of this is what Paul would do, or this is what Robert would do, or this is what Tracy would do, unless you're Tracy. You can end with that if it's yourself. But like, if I'm like, what would Brené Brown do? And then like, I'm still just in the zone of copying her. There's that extra level of like pressure testing that.
So, I mean, you make me want to start asking you questions about AI and where do you stand on, okay, you go to the community and people and ask for the collective of the humans. What about the collective of the AIs right now? And that's somewhere further down in the questions. But since we're here, what's your take on that? Where does the AI intelligence, in quotes, fit into that?
So again, I can only speak from my own perspective. I think there's lots of different ways that people can use AI. I think that AI by nature, or at least by practice right now at the stage of that AI is at, is an amplifier. And so if you show up as a curious expert marketer, you can get specific things out of AI that a professional chef is going to get something different out of the same set of information. So I think it's important for us to remember that this is a mashup of global knowledge. It is neither what you think nor how you sound. And so long as we are not using it to create in those arenas, then go nuts. You can find a way that it can automate some back-end tasks that you really hate doing. High five. I like to use, it's funny because I like to pit the AIs against each other. So I'm like trying to be curious about this. What does ChatGPT think? What versus what does Claude think? And like, how are they prompting me differently? And I like to use them as conversation partners, right? Like, how can they give me a new perspective? A conversation with a human can give me a new perspective. A conversation with AI can give me a new perspective. But at the end of the day, that piece of data, that piece of information is something to be tried on against your personal brand. And if it fits you, good. If it doesn't, well, the thing, I read this book called We Solve Murders, and I love a good murder book. And the bad guy, using ChatGPT to disguise his identity, right? So like, he's like, write this. So all of his responses are written as if he is a French bureaucrat. Right? And so like, use your imagination to extrapolate the farthest away from French bureaucrat you can get in your imagination right now. That's who the actual person is. And so it's like really interesting because I think a lot of times we're like, well, it knows more, as in it has more information in it than our brain has in it. And how it would say it is more straightforward, more simple, even when like, how can I take this and make it more concise, right? Like, conciseness is good. I'm not saying conciseness is bad, but there's also a way you would make it concise, and we just have to watch that. So awareness is key in the AI arena.
All right, so kind of still on the thread of AI, sort of. When we spoke, what was it, probably a month or two ago, you described yourself as the ultimate lazy human who is eagerly waiting for robots that actually work. Now, you would think that a lazy human would probably love marketing automation, but you also told me you actually found that the automation world is largely unfulfilling. So I'm curious about, let's explore that dichotomy a little bit. So why is it that the tools designed to save us time, like you had alluded to a dishwasher robot in our conversation, which I think is a brilliant idea, and I can't wait to get one of my own, often ends up stripping the meaning out of the work?
So, okay, my example that I always use is a slap chop. So, quick backstory. I have granola. I eat a lot of granola. And when I eat granola, I hand chop nuts for it. When I hand chop, specifically pecans, from my granola, I feel like a celebrity chef. I'm a big fan of like the cooking shows, and like you watch the guys and their knives are like, since I met my husband, he used to work in kitchens. He taught me knife skills. And I'm like, I want to practice my knife skills. So when I chop my nuts, it's an opportunity for me to practice my knife skills. I can see how I'm improving. There's like a personal experience I have with chopping nuts, which not all people have. So just like, you try and find your own example of
It's a
this.
whole rabbit hole to go
experience.
down there, but maybe that's
right.
another podcast.
But like one day my dad was visiting and he saw me chopping nuts and he was like, you need a slap chop. And I was like, I get that concept, right? A slap chop would chop my nuts faster. Absolutely, it would chop my nuts faster. But it would also take away the joy I have in chopping the nuts. And again, not everyone finds joy in chopping nuts, so that's not the point. But when we're using automation to take away something that brings us joy from a human experience point of view, it's confusing to me. I think this is where we get into these like the vibes of being very unfulfilled. I had a coach once too who said to me like, you have to outsource your social media. You need someone else to do your social media for you. And I was like, I get what you're saying, because a lot of people feel very unfulfilled by doing social media, except I don't. I really have fun doing social media. So now what you're telling me to do is outsource something that feels really good to me and replace it with something that doesn't feel very good to me. And this is the wrong direction. It's going down the rabbit hole in the wrong direction. So I think that is a component that we need to look at when we're looking at automation. The other thing about automation is automation historically has been very good at speeding up things we didn't really need to do in the first place. So unlike a dishwashing robot where like I cook, I feed my family, we have dishes, the dishes have to get cleaned at some point. Otherwise I cannot use those dishes again. And I'm not just going to keep buying new dishes. So like dishwashing robot, I mean, a dishwasher is a good example of that. There's just some dishes that can't go in the dishwasher, hence the dishwashing robot. But like that is an automation then that helps you do the things you have to do. Sending out more emails, as an example from a marketing automation point of view, isn't necessarily doing anything for anybody, except now we are paying a system to do it for us. We are also now more disconnected from the end state of that activity, right? If the point of that activity is to connect us to a customer, putting a bigger gap between me and the customer isn't accomplishing that. So again, it's not that I don't want to be on here and be like, all automation is bad. And sometimes email automation can be helpful, but we have to be very specific about our purpose behind using it and then check to make sure that it's actually enabling that purpose. If the reason we're using this AI is to give us more time to be creative, that's cool. That's a great idea. But we also have to measure to see if that's what it's doing. Or were all of those cold outreach conversations that I was having actually triggering my creativity, therefore making it easier for me to be creative? And now that I've removed myself from that process, it makes it more difficult to be creative. So these are the things. When I say lazy, I'm all about productivity. I got a lot of stuff I want to do. Right? I don't want to spend 80 hours a week working. Nope. I'm over that. That will never, ever happen again. And so I'm always looking for tools. I don't believe in hacks. I feel like the concept of a hack is like taping together something, and at some point the tape is going to fall apart. But when we can like streamline what we're doing in a meaningful way so that it enables us to do more meaningful things, then we win. But the meaning is a key component.
So a whole bunch of things, but first on the hacks thing, my keyboard on my laptop, the tab key, apparently is the key I use the most. The cover of it popped off a few weeks ago. And so I brought it to a specialist who happens to be, is very unique, is a gentleman in the west end of town here in Montreal who has a desk set up in the coiffure salon of his wife. So you walk into this hairdressing salon. It has two hairdressing chairs. You walk all the way to the back, and there is a desk with this dude sitting behind it with stacks of used laptops and related parts. And you bring it to him, and he knows what he's doing, man. This is the hack expert for fixing laptops. And so he takes apart my tab key, and he's like, okay, so there's 4 feet on your tab key, and one of them is broken, but I've put it back, but you just got to be careful. Like the cover's probably going to pop off again. So I'm like, well, can you do anything about that? And he thinks for a second. He's like, hang on. And within 1 minute, he had a very small piece of good old clear Scotch tape, and he taped it onto my tab key. I'm looking at it right now, and there is in fact a piece of tape holding my tab key in place. And he said it won't last forever, but when it comes off, just replace the tape. So I'm going to push back a little bit on your you don't believe in hacks, because I have to tell you that this piece of tape has made my life a lot better and has definitely improved the longevity of my tab key. Okay, close bracket. So you were talking about some really great recurring themes there. I heard you say basically do what you love, right? So don't automate something if you love doing it, because if you love doing it, it's not work. It's something you love doing, right? Be intentional. So everything you're doing, do it with intention. And again, if it's something you don't like doing, you're not going to be intentional about it. That's a good candidate for automating. Or in the old world, before automation existed, maybe you delegate that to another person to do for you who does like doing that or doesn't mind getting paid well to do it. And then the other thing, do unto others, right? As you would do unto yourself. This is about sending out emails that nobody wants, right? Ask yourself, all right, I figured out how to automate emails and I can send out, an email every week to a whole bunch of people and it's not going to take any of my time. But ask yourself, if you were on the other end of that, receiving the emails, would you really want to be getting that extra email every week? Is it valuable to you as the recipient? So totally aligned with what you're talking about, Tracy. Let's bring the conversation a little bit back towards the fractional world. And you work with a lot of founders. Where do you see a lot of founders getting it wrong when they're looking for fractional help?
They don't know what they need. And I think this is, to some degree, I do feel like this is the responsibility of the fractional representatives, because we are experts in our industry and we can probably more easily diagnose what someone actually needs. And it's also important for us to be honest when that's not us, right? Like, what you need is someone to go. So I'm not a graphic designer, right? You do not want me doing graphic design.
Sure.
I didn't do my own graphic design. I have a sister who's a graphic designer, right? So like, know your strengths and like be helpful, right? So if you can go out and be helpful, be like, this is not what you need. I think this will fill this gap. And then maybe this is what you need later. Or like, a lot of times from a marketing point of view, I end up diagnosing not a marketing problem, right? This is a sales problem. This is a branding problem. Somebody who's really good at like marketing execution isn't necessarily the same person who's going to be very good at like creating a brand strategy that makes sense or helping you identify gaps in your brand strategy. Somebody who's a fractional sales representative can do a lot of really meaningful stuff. There's a lot of opportunities for fractional people to work together so that we can just all live in our zones of genius. But there's a lot of information out there now. The internet and AI has only made it seem easier to diagnose your own problem, but it didn't turn you into a doctor. It turned you into WebMD, right? A doctor diagnoses problems differently than WebMD. And so again, I think this is important to talk about because for founders, for fractionals, like let's help keep this top of mind in the conversation. This can give you a little bit of information, but a little bit of information that is the wrong window into the whole world of information ends up not being helpful. And so how can we be helpful in helping people understand, like, when do you need fractional marketing? The thing I love about fractionals, there's so many things, especially for small businesses, that don't require full-time help, right? Like you as a small business, businesses even up to like 10, probably $50 million. You don't need a full-time strategic marketer. You need somebody who can be intentionally looking at all of these things, but intentionally looking at all of these things is not a full-time job. So then we get like confused and we're like, well, I want to just hire someone full-time. So I'll have them do that, but then they'll also do this and they'll also do grant writing and they'll also do all of these, a whole bunch of little things that I smack together into a job description. And you're like, but now you can't be intentional about any of those things because you filled that person's time with doing stuff. So again, one of the really great opportunities for fractionals to just come out and make sure that this is continually part of the conversation. What do you need? What don't you need? How can we create this vibe of trustworthy people that is not like, I'm just not out here to try and convince you to do business with me. This is why I like to call myself an authentic marketing advisor, because by nature, not everyone needs an authentic marketing advisor. This is not the thing for all people. This is this thing. And if you need this thing, then I'd be super happy to plug in there. But I'm not I'm not a full-time CMO. I have no interest in being a full-time CMO. Again, not that a full-time CMO is bad when it makes sense for your business. But again, like being able to just own your narrative, whatever piece of the fractional puzzle it is that you want to play, and help people to understand. And from a marketing perspective, because I know like not all of the fractional pros that are listening to this are marketing people. One of the things that I believe marketers, especially expert marketers, are very clear at is that like there's not one right thing for all people, right? There's not one right marketing strategy. There's not one right platform. There's not one right tactic. There's not one right combination of all those things, right? Like it's really dependent on you and your brand and what you're trying to do. And like, how can we help? Be helpful. Be helpful first. Use your expertise to help people figure out whether or not they need you, and then have an awesome network of people that fill the gaps.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a really good point, which is there's a lot of business owners out there who are uncomfortable with the concept of hiring a kind of a part-time or fractional C-suite executive. In their mind, it doesn't equate how somebody who's not fully immersed 100% of the time in the business could possibly bring as much value to the business as somebody who is on the full-time payroll. And in fact, counterintuitively, what often happens is because the fractional is not part of the daily whirlwind and is not caught up in, the politics that inevitably happen in an organization and all these other things that really aren't important to do for that particular person, they are much more productive because they can be laser focused on what they need to get done. They're executing against the scope of work. And also because they're not on the payroll, in my case, my contracts are month to month. Even if I have it's kind of like an agreed upon long-term engagement, I don't have any like cancellation clauses or penalties. Like if I'm not performing for you on a monthly basis, at the end of every month, you can say goodbye and that's the end. So there's even more pressure on me to perform every single month on a constant basis than there might be on somebody who's working full time and is kind of like, well, if I don't get this done today, I'll get it done tomorrow. That doesn't fly in the fractional world. So, that's kind of part of the education piece of thing, that there's still businesses who need to understand the value proposition of hiring a fractional, bringing a fractional into the business.
Yeah,
you shared
and it's
a great
just
example. Oh, go ahead.
It's just a different value proposition, right? So when we think about, if we tie this back into kind of like the robot example, right? If we're thinking about what do we think is this value of the embeddedness in the business, right? Like it's because they're living the day to day and like feeling the culture, right? Versus like getting caught in the whirlwind. Because I don't think anyone would say, I don't think a CEO would say, I guess I want my C-level people to get caught in the whirlwind. Okay.
Yep, no one says that.
We really want them to be embedded. What does that mean, right? And even like these types of conversations that we have the opportunity to create from a fractional perspective that maybe are not happening on site at these businesses. And if we do that, then we also help to demonstrate our focus, right? Like by me being focused in this, I'm able to add this value. It might be different, especially for people who came from corporate, right? For anybody who came from corporate has this definition of job description and this is what you do and it's an 8-hour-a-day job and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, as we've chosen to be fractionals, part of our role now is like breaking that down. I'm not saying that doesn't make sense in any scenario, but there are specific scenarios where that doesn't make sense. And when you want somebody to be laser focused on doing a thing, it doesn't make sense for them to be caught in the whirlwind. So let's look at what does it look like for us to be fully feeling and experiencing the culture. So especially from a fractional marketing point of view, like I can be cognizant of that, thinking about customer experiences and things like that. But at the end of the day, what is the value, or is there in fact greater value in me not being caught up in that whirlwind?
Yeah, and I think another point you touched on is often a fractional will come in with a pretty fixed mandate from the founder or the CEO. And once we get on site, we realize that it's not a marketing problem, for example. It's a people problem, like you said. It's an HR problem. It's an execution problem with people executing. And that's where it's great for Fractional to have a good network, a solid network of other fractionals and other execution partners that they can call in and lean on. So, for example, if it's a people problem, I know there's some people experts that I can somehow very nicely say to the CEO, yeah, so I noticed that blah, 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 and not sure if you're aware of that, but I think it might be good for you to have a conversation with this person who's really good at that, and that also demonstrates more value as a fractional to the business, because they see that you're not just a one-trick pony. You're kind of like, I don't know, the plumber bringing in the whole toolkit with all these fancy tools that, typically you wouldn't think a plumber might need, but actually, in some cases, they're going to pull it out of that toolbox because it's something that they've noticed. Actually, a great example, I had a plumber come here the other day, and they realized they didn't just need to fix the pipes, but they needed to get behind the wall to fix the pipes. So next thing you know, he's got a chisel and a hammer out. He's chiseling down the tiles of the wall. That's not something you typically think of a plumber doing. So there's a good example for you. Mm-hmm. All right. You talked about an example of a B2B tech client who was trying to copy the Rockefeller habits, which again, as you say, are strategies built for 1920s steel magnates or massive corporations, which is actually the origins of the Rockefeller habits. And here we are 100 years later, and they're still very, very top of mind, very used, and very, very quoted. So, as you say, we can't just copy and paste. So how do you help a client look at a $1 trillion company strategy, take that learning, and then actually build something that works for a startup in Calgary, for example?
I think so. I love the concept of trying things on, right? So if we think about the Rockefeller habits as an outfit, right? And there's lots. I think I even shared this with you before. There's lots of good things in the Rockefeller habits. It's a very popular book for a good reason. But again, we have to look at our own origin story on top of any kind of, whether you're looking at it, a marketing strategy, a business strategy, how you're going to structure your business from a revenue generation point of view, someone's story, Rockefeller habits, Apple, Tesla, right? All of these things are one way to do it. And looking at a way and being okay, this is what I like about that. This is what I wouldn't do. This is not relevant now because the way people interact with media nowadays is completely different than the way people interacted with media. Media didn't even really exist when this was created. Now we've been through a whole evolution from I'm really open to doing anything that marketing says to now we're in this area where people are really, really skeptical of anything that they hear in the market. So the consumer behavior has changed, which means we can't just do the same things. The same things won't work. And so we can look at those things. We can say what would I now, as a B2B tech company, what do I like about the Rockefeller habits? I like the fact that we can really simply show everybody what it is that we do. So I have this one-page strategic plan, right? But I've seen a lot of people use the one-page strategic plan to not create strategic plans. This is a template, right? So it has to be meaningful to you. The activities, the practices, there's so many great things to look at. But then also, how is that impacting our behavior, our unique behavior as a business, as individual humans? Isn't as simple as saying, one of the other books that I commonly hear people refer to as the 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? 5 dysfunctions of a team. Read the book, great dysfunctions, right? I've worked in a company where every employee had to read the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Everybody got the book as a part of their onboarding package. And yet, did we actually do anything with that information? No. So it's how how can we take information? And again, whether this is coming from a like very well-known, well-loved book, or whether this is coming from AI or it's coming from a Google search, how do we try that on against what we would do and give ourselves a little bit of credit to the degree of saying like, okay, yeah, I haven't built my business to the size of a steel magnate today, right? That, Kate, facts. But also like, how would I grow to that level? How would I invite the right people into the conversation? How would I? And then again, I feel like this is a really great opening for fractionals, because we have an opportunity to be like, okay, I'm the right person, but you don't need a full-time person for that right now, right? Like, so let's go do these things together and let's build a thing. And then it's like, yeah, if you get to the size of Apple, you're going to have a whole marketing team. You're not just going to have a fractional CMO. But like, this is a process, and who's the right people to get involved in the process at the different stages. And when you're a startup and a small business, the logic just matches fractionals.
100%. But it's also really hard to see that when you're at the beginning stages of a business, because you're just bombarded with so many fires to put out, so many urgent things. The gut reaction is, okay, I need this, let's get them all in place, without really thinking about what do you really need and who do you really need and how much of them do you really need at this point in time. And it's tough to step away and get some clarity on that. You kind of need almost like a fractional consultant to help you determine what fractionals you need to hire. It's like the next level up of fractional.
Well, and again, like, this is why I think, like, if as fractionals, right? And again, like, it's interesting for me because marketing in particular has been like freelanced for a long time. So you get like video editors, graphic designers, where there's a lot of quote unquote fractional services that have been provided for many years in marketing. So people have a perspective of fractional in terms of tactical, right? I've used fractional in the marketing sense from a tactical point of view. And so I don't have a behavior of doing that from a strategic point of view. So there's a behavior change that is required. And if fractionals can be, and like, whether that's in your marketing, in your conversations, in your communities, like, be helpful, then you become the trusted advisor first before you become a paid advisor. Okay. And marketing, again, one of the things I feel like marketers know is that like nobody really convinces people of anything. Like, marketing doesn't convince people to do stuff. Marketing shows people that there's something that helps them if they've already decided they need that. The example I always use is a refrigerator. Right? You can come every day of my life and try and sell me a refrigerator, but until I need a refrigerator, I'm going to completely ignore you. And so like, that's a difference to like be in conversation and then know somebody is all about refrigerators, so that when I need a refrigerator, I have somebody to ask about refrigerators. Like, tech is a good example of this too, right? Like, your tech guy, right? Like, I don't have a broken tab key every day, but when I do have a broken tab key, I go to the guy at the salon.
That's right.
Like, this is
get my hair done too.
This is about branding and reputation, right? Like, when we build that, and again, be helpful, help people realize you don't have a marketing problem. You don't need a marketing, like, and again, like, trust is built by different people in different ways. But when we show up and we be helpful, that contributes to trust. And then if someone trusts me to say like, I really don't think that that's what you need, then I can be more helpful. So let's go be helpful and help. The perceptions take a minute to change, right? Like, humans are like a light switch where we're just like, I'm going to change to totally understand how this fractional stuff makes sense. No, we have to help people along the journey. And when we are like legitimately being helpful, I'm going to sit here and another great example I use is like, I'm trained in social selling, and social selling works really great in specific scenarios. It does not work great in all scenarios. And so Like I work with Platform Calgary, which is our local incubator. And as like founders go through these programs, to date, there has been one of them where I'm like, oh, for like your personality and your business purpose and how you like to network and how you want to grow your business, this could really make sense for you. Maybe let's talk about it. But again, if we end up in this camp of like, this is what we do. I don't know if we want to talk about this today because we're running out of time, but I have like big problems with the concept of signature offers when it comes to fractionals. Like this can make sense for you, and here's how I can help you. Versus like, I sell social selling and I'm going to go out and convince everyone they need social selling. And then now we've kind of broken the trust factor in the whole equation, right? Because now we're just all out going to try and sell our stuff instead of go out and being experts. Part of being an expert is helping people understand when they think they need what you have, but they really don't.
Well, let's dig into that. So you're talking about a fractional who's going out selling specific packages of services rather than doing more of a good old consultative selling approach where they come in and instead of right away start selling here, package A, B, C, gold, bronze, silver, it's questions. Tell me about your business. Tell me about your challenges. Tell me about where you want to go. Tell me about what you're having trouble to get there, etc. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, like some people will call it solution selling. But for me, and maybe this is just also me, and there's different personalities, and there's different people who buy different things too. But for me, like I'm in this whole business to help people. And so I ask my discovery questions to figure out if I can help. That's also, first of all, with my set of skills and how I want to add value to an organization, but also my personality, right? Is my personality mesh with this personality, or would maybe a different fractional CMO who theoretically can do exactly what I would do, but has a different personality and a different approach fit this scenario better? And I think then we open again the can of worms of like whether we're coming from an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset and all of these different things, and whether the buyer is coming from a scarcity mindset or abundance mindset. There's a whole level of human complication in like all of these conversations. But the point being that when and I think too, the thing I see from a marketing perspective is there's a lot of people out there who are like, create your signature offer. And I think this falls a little more into the like coaching arena, but it like spills over into the fractional consulting arena. Because I've seen a really great friend of mine is a fractional ops. And we had a like really long conversation one day about her signature offer. And I asked her, based on everything you've seen in the operations arena, is there one set of things that everybody needs from ops? And she was like, no.
Whoops.
And I like there might be people out there who think that there is, and then like maybe having a signature offer makes sense. But for her, I was like, so does it feel really authentic for you to come into a situation pretending to know what someone needs when you know that's not even what you're going to do? Like what you're going to do is the consultative approach. And she was like, no, but how do I sell the consultative approach? I'm like, that's a different question. So like that, like, let's get into the conversation about like, there's lots of different ways to sell the consultative approach. And even I have my way of doing that, but my way works for me. It's not like a magic way that will work for everybody. So again, this ties back into what I said earlier about the value of conversation. If we're all in a group and we're saying like, okay, we believe in the consultative approach. What I'm going to do is the consultative approach. So I don't want to sell something that looks like not the consultative approach, but how do I sell that? Cool. Let's explore. Let's experiment. Like, let's get into conversation and bounce some ideas off of each other of what's worked for me that maybe you can try. Not that it will work for you, but it's a place to start. This is where we can then, like, me going out to the market to offer something that doesn't match how I'm going to do the service is very risky. First of all, it's more difficult to sell, even if it's seemingly easier to sell, because I quote unquote made it easier for people to understand what it is that I do. But how I've presented it and how I'm going to show up and do stuff is now not in alignment. And anytime something's not in alignment, it degrades trust instead of building trust. So how do we align all of these ways that we're showing up between our anywhere from proposal? Like, I don't make proposals anymore. I will do assessments, right? I will do an assessment and then I will give you the result of an assessment. But for me to do a proposal for you with not the right information, like, you might as well just collect them and throw them up and pick one out of the air. Like, you're not strategically getting proposals. So why would I give you a non-strategic proposal? I won't do that. And so there's opportunities for us to stand up for, like, this is how I serve and this is how the rest of how I'm showing up matches with that.
So you don't do proposals, but you do assessments. But I would think that you do the assessment. The assessment kind of uncovers, here's where you have some challenges. You don't follow that up with, here's how I can help you solve those challenges.
I do if I can help you solve those challenges.
Okay.
If I can't help you. And this is why I like the assessment, right? Because someone coming at me and saying, like, I need a marketing strategy. I'm like, maybe, maybe you need a marketing strategy. So I could create a proposal for you today that says, here's a $25,000 marketing strategy, but I don't know your problem. I don't know what works for you. I don't know anything to make a proposal on. So I will do an assessment and then I will give you information. You will get value out of the assessment. Here's the assessment. Here's what it's going to reveal. There's value associated with that. This is what it costs, right? But also one of the things I love about the assessment is it gives us this really short, meaningful, impactful time frame where I get to decide, do I really want to help this person? Or do I think that this person is even open to my style of help, right? Because if they're not, I don't want to work together with you on a project for 2 years. Right? We're going to hate each other by the end. That's not how you build your brand reputation. Right? So, and again, like, all of this is tied into how I believe in helping people. This is not the right way to help people. This is Tracy's way of helping people, which is rooted in my origin story, which is where we started the conversation, right? And so then I can say, okay, this is what we revealed. Do you really want to get more connected to your customers? How I would do that is customer conversations. I believe in customer conversations. I do not believe in, like, blank surveying a bunch of people who paid you $5 million to do a thing. I believe go get them a nice bottle of wine, go to their house or take them out for dinner and have a conversation. Like, that would be my strategy. If you're not in alignment with that, I don't want to go and do an NPS thing for you. No, that's not what I would do, right? And I don't think it's going to work. So, and I believe that both parties thinking it's going to work is a critical component of it working. So, like, again, all of this ends up matching me. And then I can say, yes, I think if I looked at all of these, low-hanging fruit is this. For an example, I did that with a client and they had this, they were like, we want to get our people out in front of people digitally. And I'm like, okay, you could do a live streaming show. And the cost is, like, we ended up buying a StreamYard, like, it's like $60 a month or something, right? So, like, here's the cost of doing that. This is, like, negligible for a business that is making this amount of money. Try it, right? Let's try it for 3 months. See what happens, right? We start getting traction. We're not getting traction. What's feeling good about the show, right? Like, what's feeling rehearsed? What's feeling easy? And we, like, marketing sprint experiment to, like, figure out how this is going to work for you. And then within, like, in that example, within 60 days, they had leads coming into the salespeople's calendars from the show, right? So, like, but that's based on your problem. It's based on the, like, personalities of the people that you have. And then, like, this could make sense for you because of that. But yeah, I'm not again, like, if you look at that as an example, I don't think every client needs a live stream show, right? That's not, so I'm not, like, going out and having a signature package of, like, I'm going to do this assessment and turn it into a live stream show. I'm going to do the assessment, and I, by nature, don't know where the destination of that is. But what I do know is that we can create a point A After the assessment, you are the one who dictates the point B. I'm also the person who will pressure test your point B to figure out whether or not it's yours, right? Or it's someone else's idea of, I should double my revenue this year. Let's pressure test that, please. And then we actually have a defined A, a defined B, which means we can identify the gap. Okay? And how you fill that gap, I love the concept of bridges, right? So like if you look at pretty much any bridge anywhere, now I can go and be like, I'm a bridge architect, right? But any bridge I design is going to be different because there's different materials and different banks and the water's moving at different speeds and it degrades the thing. And some need cars to go across them and some need trains to go across them and some are just people bridges, right? Like there are 0 bridges in the world that are the same. But as the bridge architect, these are the things I know to ask, and then I can help you design the bridge. And then maybe I'm the right person to build the bridge, or maybe I'm not the right person to build the bridge. I do know the right people to build the bridge. So when we look at our roles as fractionals, and again, like whatever role you want to play in the bridge making process is not wrong, right? But like, let's know what our roles are so I can say, I'm a bridge architect. I am not a bridge builder. I want the iron expert on my team, right? But I'm not the iron expert. And like, I want the land and mineral guys who can tell me like the bank is going to degrade this fast at this time. Great. But like, I don't want to be that guy. I just want to be the master designer. And then like when we know and we can, I think also the like internal knowing is a critical component of being able to communicate that to anybody. So to communicate that to potential clients, to communicate that to partners, right? Like once you know and you get it, I know what an authentic marketing advisor is. You don't have to know what that is. I can explain it to you, right? But it's not in an I help statement. It's in an experience, right? This is the experience. So as fractionals, I feel like this always comes back to this concept of trusted advisor to me. Like, what is our thing that we want to be a trusted advisor on? And how can we just go out in the world and be that trusted advisor? If we can be that trusted advisor before someone asks us for a proposal, when we get to the point where like a proposal doesn't make sense and here's why, then people are open to hearing that feedback.
Well, after this, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and completely reevaluate if I should call myself a fractional CMO or a trusted advisor. Wow.
I mean, who says you can't do both?
Well,
you can use a title of fractional CMO and still be in the beingness of a trusted advisor. I think that's the key, right? Like at the end of the day, no one cares what you call yourself. People are going to trust you because of how you perform and how you help them, right? Full stop.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, a title is just a title. It's a bunch of words that mean different things to different people. And at the end of the day, as you touched on, cultural fit is as important as actual hard skills. So, right. Yeah. All right, Tracy, I've got another 3 pages of questions, which we're not going to get to this time around because somehow time has just flown by. But let's wrap up with the traditional closing question here on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast, which is, if you could put one message on a billboard for business leaders and fractionals to see as they drive by it on the highway of life every day, what would that message be?
Oh, what do you wonder?
What do you wonder?
Okay, let me just elaborate on that briefly. First of all, I have a chalkboard in my office that says, "What do you wonder?" and "you" is underlined, right? I think as humans, we have become disconnected from what we uniquely wonder. We have been programmed into these are good questions to ask. These are the things you should ask your AI. And people are constantly giving us their questions, right? And again, it's not that their questions are bad. They're just not your questions. And so if you can connect to your questions, what do you wonder? What are you asking? Oh, that's the magic.
What do you wonder?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Tracy, thank you so much for sharing some time with us today on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
Thanks, Robert.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.